I'm a small town kid born with a big city spirit. 17 years ago, I founded a marketing consultancy, and ever since, my husband JR and I have been building our careers and our family on the exact same timeline. That means 4 kids, 3 businesses, 2 careers, all building towards one life we love. I choose to play a lot of awesome roles in life. When I discovered I could purposefully embrace all of these ands in my life, it unlocked my world. And I want that for you too. I'm Tiffany Souter, and this is Scared Confident. So who is Carlie Oakley? She's this blonde sprite of a human, and she just has this enormous energy about her. But practically, she plays the role of the chief brand officer at 811 Group, which is like this roll up, like the holding company for different companies that are in the staffing business. And what I think is so special about Carlie is she was in the first 5 employees of this company, and now they have thousands of employees all over the country. And so she just has been on a really cool journey of growth. And her husband also has got this massive career. And so I've been drawn to them as a really dynamic 2-career family that really has big expectations that life is going to be big and have a lot of really cool things in it. And so it was really cool to be able to have this conversation with her, to finally get her on the podcast. So this conversation with Carlie took an unexpected turn. Well, not unexpected, but took a turn really towards vulnerability. And if there was one gift that I could hand my children, it would be the ability to create the habit to be vulnerable. And I did a little bit of research. Okay, I looked at the definition of what is vulnerability, because I know what it feels like, but how do I explain it to someone? And it says it's the ability to be exposed to the unknown, like an uncertain environment. And as we get to be adults, it's like our desire for control, our desire to be strategic, our desire to show up in the best possible way, whatever it is, we lose the habit, we lose the ability to be vulnerable. And it creates these great distances in us as people. And I think there's just enormous consequence in our ability to grow, our ability to learn, our ability to become the next version of ourselves when we're not able to be vulnerable. And so I just think it's such an important concept to practice, to understand, to set our minds to. And I love that this conversation with Carlie brought that forward. And I hope you enjoy this conversation on radical vulnerability with Carlie Oakley. Carlie Oakley.
Yeah.
I'm so pleased to have you on Scare Confident. You have been a woman I've seen lead from afar, and over the last, year or two, I feel like our lives have become closer as moms and as professional women. And so I'm excited to just let my listeners get a chance to know you a little bit and explore a little bit together some of what life has presented to you in the last few years. So
okay, thank you for having
joining me. You're welcome. Well, let's start by just orienting to kind of who is Carlie Oakley, giving people a little background on your family, what that looks like, and then what your job looks like, what you do in that.
Okay. So I am a mom of 2 young kids. Marin is going to be 13 on Friday, so first teenager moment, which is weird. And Gage is 11. And my husband and I have been married for 21 years. He's the CEO of a company and then also a partner in car washes. And I am the chief brand officer of 811 Group, which is the parent company of a family of companies, Brooksource, Metasource, and Calculated Hire.
So what I love, I think part of why my spirit leaned into yours and said, can we be friends, is you live also this life of a 2-career home. And, Brent, your husband, has had big jobs and big dreams and big career. And you also have had big job, big dreams, big career. And then alongside building your careers, your family was grown at the exact same time. It's also the hand that life dealt us. I know, I don't know if we chose it or it chose us. You probably feel similarly to that. Right. And so I think those paths are really parallel. I'd love to maybe pause there for a minute and say, when you look at the craziness that is your life, what are the anchors for you in pulling it all off? People from a distance can say, like, you've got it all. What has to be in place for you to feel like, hey, look, this is sustainable for me?
Yeah. That's a great point. I think it's been a work in progress throughout the years. I have worked for 811 Group almost the entire time I've been married. There was a year interim where I had a different job before I got hired there. But I think it's been a constant work in progress based on where we were in the moment of time. So when your kids are tiny babies, they need something totally different than they need now. And so for us, it is a village of humans that can help. And obviously people say it takes a village to raise a child, but truly I could not do it without a village. For us, I think it's being super open, communicating on what our needs are on our job, and those pivot frequently, as I'm sure you can relate to. We have a nanny that helps us with our house and with our kids. I recently hired somebody to help with meals. So she's a chef. And it's funny because if you would ask me 20 years ago, I would have never thought that I had a chef helping me once a week. But it allows me the ability to walk out of my house knowing I can feed my kids a good dinner at night and not have that stress a couple times a week. So great with DoorDash every other night, but at least a couple nights a week, I know that they have food and it allows me to have good food. And it allows me to not have that part of the stress. So
there's a whole spectrum of care.
Yeah.
When you're a two-career family with kids, there is no choice but to figure out who you're going to pay to help you and what the model is that works for your family.
Yep.
It's not if. It's going to absolutely happen. And so you guys have a live-in nanny.
We do currently. She's actually moving out this week, but that was never
so
the
maybe give just
intentional
a
plan.
little bit about that, because it's always very interesting for me to learn just about different ways that people do it. And
Absolutely.
so I think sharing that with
Yeah.
people who are trying to figure out, because there's pros and cons to everything.
There are. And I would have never thought that would have been our plan. She had been our nanny for a year prior to having a very traumatic personal situation happen. Unfortunately, she lost her husband in a tragic accident a month before she was getting a kidney transplant. I don't even know if that's something I've ever shared with you.
Wow.
And so at the time, she felt not deserving of the kidney and what's the point of going through this? And we said, move in with us. We'll help ease this burden as you help ease ours. And so at the time, we thought that was just a small blimp in the radar. 3 years later, she actually is moving out on Friday.
Okay.
But that moment in time that we never planned for actually brought so much good to our family too. So I don't know that there's good, bad, and different that you can actually define. I think that's for everybody to choose what works best for them. For me, my stress is my kids and making sure that they can always say yes to the things they want to say yes to. And if Brent and I lived our work lives the way that we do, they wouldn't be able to say yes to all of that without the help of Melanie.
Totally. I think that's exactly right. Getting our kids actually like physically to places when they can't drive and stuff. But I don't think the other piece, having time to actually be in relationship with them, not just administering their lives. And when you look at things like cooking for them or doing their laundry, and again, I'm a farm kid. I never imagined that these would be things that I would have the choice to pay for.
Right.
But it is a trade-off between the hours that you can put into your job, the earning potential that comes from that, and being able to be present for the moments that matter. And I think each family has to pick what their moments that matter are. And like you said, it changes as your kids grow. What would you say your kids most need from you? One of the things I've observed as my kids have gotten older, I feel like when they're younger, it's like kind of what I need from them. Like you either like bathing them or you don't. Like, I don't really like it. I was fine outsourcing it. There's like things when they're little, you kind of decide what you like to do for them.
Yeah.
But as they get older, like my daughter's also 13 and I have an 11-year-old, it is about listening well for what do they need from you? What do they need to feel centered before they go to school? What do they need to feel before they go to a new social event so they feel confident? have you noticed kind of what your kids need from you and how that's different?
Yeah, it's funny that you asked that because I actually just thought about this a couple of weeks ago when the kids were in elementary or even in preschool. I was like, okay, I can't be that room mom. I can't be the person sitting down and reading a book to them at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday. So I will volunteer to do every field trip. And I quickly learned that that was a horrible thing that I had told them I was going to do. One, I didn't enjoy it. That wasn't my space with them. And two, they didn't need that from me, nor will they ever even remember that, most likely, other than the pictures that I will show them to prove that I was there. But now we ask them. So going into the new year, when we do goals, when Brent and I do goals together, we also ask them, what do you need from us? Or what do you want from us? What's really important in a tough work week? What's really important? And my son always says to have family dinners. So it's important to him that 2 nights a week we sit down and have a family dinner. So we're very purposeful about that. For my daughter, she's in that age, and I'm sure you can agree that what she needs from us, I don't think she knows on a daily basis, right? So I try to just be available to talk to her when she needs that extra guidance. I think the really awesome thing about having help at home too, or a nanny, is my goal for Melanie is you are that extra person for them that's not the disciplinarian. So for me, that was my grandmother. I could go tell her anything, never felt judged. And I want that for my kids, to have an outlet outside of Brent and I, because their grandparents aren't here. Neither one of our parents are here in town. So it's really helpful for them to have her as a center on and flank Brent and I. The kids early on used to, I'd walk in from work and they would be like, Mom. And she would say, does that upset you? And I'm like, no, that's thrilling to me that they have somebody that loves them like a mom, that they would accidentally call us something different. So for me, I love and cherish that time for them that they have with her. I look at it as an enormous benefit, not something that's negative.
Yeah, not stepping on your toes.
Yeah.
We have had stints of in-home care where they were with us 5, 7, 8 years. And the way that we talked about, ours was Mrs. Garcia, as part of our family, her family was an extension of ours, I think does change the way that your kids also interact with them. They are here to be a part of our family. They're not here to serve us.
Right.
They're here to help us function at a really high level so that we can step all into our talents and gifts, and we love them back. Right. And and I think it does create a different relationship for the kids with, this person who's in kind of to keep them safe, to keep the wheels running, but also to love them. And when I think we start by loving them first, I think we're easier to love as a family for all of our quirks and craziness. So, okay, switching gears a little bit. If I were to call 4 people in your company and say, give me 3 adjectives about Carlie, what do you think they would say about who you are?
I think they would say energetic, motivator, and leader.
So I wanted those as an anchor point for listeners, because I would say the ones I would pick for you, definitely energetic. This is probably not an adjective, but just sort of on top of it.
Yeah.
And I would say there's a level of relentlessness about you. I don't know, you don't ever look tired. Maybe you're really great at the makeup sitch or something, but you never look tired. This is relentless showing up. I mean, what the company's done when you've been there, you have had to have broken through your own ceiling so many times because it's just what it takes, So I would say relentless. So I think those are anchoring to orient people to who you are, because I want to bridge actually into some things that you've experienced personally here in the last couple of years, because not only is it hard, but I think it probably flew in the face of who you were used to being.
Yep.
And so maybe exploring that a little bit. So you want to
absolutely
kind of transition to that and share what you've been going through?
Yes, absolutely. So I had a kidney transplant in November, 11/22/21 was the day of my kidney transplant. And the recovery of that was worse than I imagined. I think to look back on the road leading there, I trusted that my doctors would tell me when I needed a kidney. I was diagnosed with Epstein-Barr virus when I was 21, which is a form of mono that happens to cause lesions in your kidney. And I was only born with one kidney. And so once that caused the lesions, my kidney function went down drastically. So everybody can live with one kidney, but you need that kidney to function at a high level. And so starting when I was 21, mine did not function at that high of level. My doctors were unsure if I'd be able to have kids successfully. It took us a while to get pregnant with Marin, but we did. She took down my function quite a bit. And then...
So when you were pregnant, it's especially stressful on your body? Is that because you've got extra fluid and...
Blood pressure is a big part of it.
Okay, yeah.
So it skyrocketed when I was pregnant with Marin, and I was on bed rest for the last 5 weeks. And then before I had her, so 10 weeks prior to when I was supposed to have her, and I had her 5 weeks early.
Wow. Okay.
So, and then with Gage, it took down my function even more. I was at about 22% after I had him. I was really sick. And I actually ended up working with a homeopathic doctor out of Park City, Utah, who got my function up to about 27%. So I was living at 27% for about 11 years. Wow. And they just told me when I got to 20%, they would have to put me on a donor list. So I did blood work every 6 weeks, and most people didn't even know I was doing that. And I just always told the doctor, you let me know when I need to be concerned, but I'm not going to be concerned until you tell me otherwise.
In a body whose kidney is functioning at 27%, did you feel anything different? Like, I mean, I guess it was normal for you at that point, but
it was normal. No. And if my doctor was sitting here, he would say he doesn't know how.
That's a thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And my doctor that I had had since I was 16 actually retired during COVID. So that was a scary transition to a new doctor from somebody that had known me for that long and followed my chart. And so he transitioned me to a new doctor. And because of that stint where you couldn't go in just for regular appointments, I had never met my new nephrologist. So fast forward to November of 2020, I go in to meet her for the first time, and my old nephrologist is on the screen, and they have up all these screens, and I walked in and I knew that it was time. And so I kind of blacked out during all of the numbers that she was sharing with me, because her exact words when I walked in were, "It's time." So
what did you feel in that moment? I mean, you said you kind of blacked out, but what were you trying to not feel?
I think it was all of these things that rush through your mind of, what does this look like? How am I going to get a kidney? Who's going to be your donor? Can I never travel again? Can I work? What does this mean? Is my body deteriorating? I immediately went to, what is this going to do to the kids? I think I was super fortunate when I look back, crazy fortunate that my kids made it to the age that they made it to, and they weren't little. Had that happened when they were 2 and 3, I think that would have been drastically, a very different situation. But given their ages, they could understand it. It was still scary, but they could understand it, and at least we could communicate with them. And they were able to help and somewhat fend for themselves on the back end of the recovery. Whereas if they were little, I don't even know how that works. I think the other thing that went through my head, every time that I would walk into the nephrology office, they would always say, "Oh, the doctors aren't seeing reps today," because they always thought I was medical device rep.
Oh, my word.
Because I was one of the youngest patients that's ever been through this. And to everyone there, I looked really healthy, and that was abnormal. So to sit in that room and them say that it's finally time, it was...
You sort of felt like I am the outlier in the statistics, maybe forever.
Maybe I'll never, ever have to have it. And even as that went on, I kept coming back to appointments, and they said, "We felt like today was going to be the day you'd be wheeled in a wheelchair and not look like that. We don't understand how you're functioning. You have the numbers of an 85-year-old bedridden man."
What?
So after talking to my surgeon about it after the fact, I said, "Have you ever seen that before?" He said, no, but I think your mindset made you what you were. Have you ever had like a down moment or a down week or something where you felt awful? And I said, yes. And actually, for the first time ever in 2020, Brent and I both took off the 2 full weeks that the kids were home for holiday. And I felt so sick the entire time. But I think I had released the stress of work. I think I was just home and present. And I let my mind go to a place of just complete ease, which made me feel terrible.
Holy crap. That's insane.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
So even now, we do whips at our company, which, a question, you whip it around the whole table for everybody to answer. And I walked into our leadership retreat in May, which was the first event I had been back to, and walked into our calculated hire leadership team meeting, and they were doing a whip that morning. And they were like, perfect timing, Carlie. We're finishing a whip. What's the biggest lie you tell yourself every day? And I said that I feel great, that I feel amazing. And the room just stopped and stared at me. And I'm like, it's okay, but I have to. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't feel great.
Wow. That's crazy, Carlie. On the days you let yourself feel bad, does it feel like a release or no?
No. It feels like I'm choosing to let myself down.
Okay, so you're at the nephrologist and they say it's time.
Yeah.
So the woman who motivates other people and doesn't have needs now needs an organ.
Yeah.
So share what you did.
So they said, we legally have to put you on the national donor list right now because you're at 20%. However, you can opt out. I said, why would anyone opt out? Well, people would opt out because you're young, you're healthy, you should be able to survive this surgery, no problem, and you probably can get a donor that's perfectly matched. If you go on the donor list, we will give you a pager today, and there could be a 70-year-old woman that dies in a car accident in Arkansas, and she happens to be your blood type, and we will fly that kidney in immediately, call you on the pager, and you'll have to immediately come downtown for the surgery. So you're choosing any organ from the donor list, or you can be an advocate for yourself and choose to try to find one that's a better match. I said, okay, well, what's the likelihood that I can find one that's a perfect match? We don't know. Depends how many people you're willing to reach out to ask. I said, well, what does that even look like? Where does one start to ask for a kidney? And they were like, well, we highly recommend that you put a post out on Facebook and tell about your journey and ask people to get tested. And here's the website they would reach out to. And I was like, okay. And the benefit of doing that over being on the donor list is it'll probably last twice as long as it would if you got one that wasn't a perfect match, or you got one from a deceased donor that we had to transport. So what would you like to do? And I had to decide in that moment.
Were you by yourself in that room? Oh my God.
Because walking in there,
totally.
And Brent's
you don't
like,
know.
why was I not with you? And I'm
you're like, because I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I do things by myself. Because it's how it is. I know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I signed the paper, not even really thinking through what that meant, but just based on, okay, well, if I can double the livelihood of this organ.
And you're a marketer by trade, You're like, I'm a marketer. Yeah.
Right. I can do this. So they hand me all the paperwork. They hand me the link. We recommend that you send it out today, Carlie, so that we can start testing people, because the testing starts as soon as you get people in. And I'm like, okay, well, how long do I have to find someone? Like, what's the trajectory of this? Well, the quicker you find somebody, the likelihood of you not being on dialysis is greater, because at 20%, you start to decline fairly quickly. And I'm like, when would dialysis happen? And they said at 10%. And I'm like, okay, so how long will it take to go from 20 to 10? And they're like, we don't know. It could be a month. It could be a year. So they said, however, your start date starts right here. So 1 year from today is as long as your testing will be good. So let's say you go through all the testing and we start to get donors through the testing and you don't have somebody until next December, you have to go through all the testing again. Well, at the time I was like, okay, whatever. If it's me going through multiple rounds of testing, it is what it is, until I started going through the testing. And it was insane.
Really?
The amount of, stress tests, EKGs, lung tests. It was horrible. So then I thought, okay, so I got through my first round of tests, and
how many hours do you estimate you spent on the tests?
Oh, gosh.
I'm just curious.
Probably 3 weeks time frame.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It was crazy.
Oh my gosh.
I was living at IU Methodist.
Oh my
basically,
word.
I felt like everything is in a box. So I'm lumped in as an 85-year-old bedridden man with a high creatinine level.
Wow.
Not a healthy, vibrant, 44-year-old. So I'm doing all these tests. We get to February of 2022. And Brent's like, okay, you're almost done with tests. You've not sent out anything. And they asked me to send it out in November. I'm like, I can't. This isn't like putting on Facebook that you need a babysitter for a Friday night. Like, I'm asking for an organ, and I don't even put stuff on Facebook naturally.
Totally. Yeah. I don't even show when we go to Florida. Yeah. Casually.
So to ask for an organ feels not right to me. So I had to get it right in my mind. So I sent an email and I just started typing, people that I felt like were the closest to my journey, the closest to knowing the story, knowing that I even needed an organ, first of all, or that I had only one kidney, and started typing, and I landed at exactly 100 people that I sent the email out to. And I shared the journey for those of you that don't know, but most knew, shared the journey. And now I'm in need of a kidney. So here's the link. No pressure. And I will not know who tested at all unless you share that with me. They don't allow you to know anybody going through the tests. So I won't know if you signed up or you didn't. So you kind of press send and be like, okay, well, I hope one or two send it in. 4 days later, I'm not sure I can say this without crying. My advocate at the hospital called me, and she said, "What have you done in your life?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "We've never had this kind of outpouring."
Oh my word, Carlie.
She said, "We had 78 people in the last 4 days fill out the link."
Oh my word. What a moment to feel so loved. Yeah. What a moment to feel like so vulnerable and to know that your tribe is going to be there for you.
Yeah.
Is that what makes you cry?
Yeah. Like, how am I surrounded by so many amazing people that didn't even take more than 4 days to think about what that meant for their life, to give something to me?
Well, the way I think, when you serve a community so well, it is really special for you to feel that boomerang back to you so loudly.
Thank you.
So then you had a match.
Yeah. So that the testing process was crazy. And what became fun, I think, for everybody is people were kind of making it as like, ooh, I'm going to be the one. It's like immediately
they were going to win the lottery.
Yeah. Immediately it was a competition between a group of people, which was really funny.
That also says something about your tribe.
And so I had a girlfriend call me and they're like, "It's unbelievable. They told me I couldn't go through the process. All I did was go in and do blood work. And I'm like, why? And she goes, they said I was too skinny.
You're like,
I said,
that's hilarious.
we'll use this moment to eat a cheeseburger, girlfriend.
That's hilarious. That's so funny.
And, another girlfriend was really adamant about it, and she wanted to be the one. And she had some skin cancer in the past. And so she's on the phone arguing with the coordinator. Well, it just was a mole. Like, why can't I? But as they explained to her, any of that, even in the bloodstream, could really be harmful for me. And if I were to get cancer along with this organ, given the fact that my immune system was going to be so low, that could be it. So it's really amazing.
Makes you start to realize too all the how vulnerable this moment is for your body and for theirs. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So they narrowed to 20, they narrowed to 10, they narrowed to 5, and the testing for these people just became more and more extensive to a point where I'm like, I'm so sorry. You start to feel like,
do you have an hourly rate I need to pay?
Luckily, my insurance covered everything for the potential donors, which was
that's awesome.
So it got down to 5, then it got down to 3, and then it got down to 2. And this whole time, I knew the 10, I knew the 5, I knew the 3, except for 1. And I had said in my email, if you know anyone that's interested in organ donation, feel free to forward too. So I just kept thinking the 1 was a forward because I couldn't imagine that any friend wouldn't share with me that they were going through this. So it was a really good friend that I work with, was one of the 2. And we were calling the other one ghost donor because we had no idea who it was. Fast forward, and a really good friend that we just became close truly in the last 2 years. But we got really close because our daughters are friends. And so she had reached out to me and said, hey, can you get together for happy hour one night next week? And I'm like, oh, it's the week before our national conference. I'm booked solid. And she's like, I really just need an hour of your time. And so, like a true person that's trying to fit puzzle pieces together, I'm like, I have from 4 to 5, but you're gonna have to meet me at this exact spot. So we're sitting there talking, and I initially thought I was going there because Marin had done something bad to her girls, by the way. So I was going there for her to tell me something bad. And she wasn't getting there. So I just thought, okay, she just really wanted to get together. 45 minutes into it, she says, by the way, I've been meaning to ask, how's all the kidney testing going? And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just, when I start telling about all these tests and how they won't, share with me even where anybody else is on the donor phase. And she's like, I totally understand. It's a lot. She's like, I've been going through kidney testing myself. And I'm like, what? What's wrong with your kidney? And she's like, I'm one of your 2.
Oh my gosh.
Again. And I am, as you know, never speechless, ever. And I think I sat there and stared at her for what felt like 10 minutes because I had all of this stuff processing through my head like, what? How have you gone through this? And I didn't know. How have your girls not known? How have your girls not shared with Marin? You've got too much on your plate. I tried to talk a lot of people out of it through the whole phase too. This is too much for you. You can't do this. And my doctor said, will you stop doing that? That's not your place. And I said, Jenny, I don't even know what to say to you, but are you sure this is a lot? And she was like, I didn't want to tell you until I knew I was your match because I didn't want you to get your hopes up.
Oh my word.
And I said, well, now you're 1 of 2. And she goes, no, I'm not. I'm your donor. She's like, I know it. And they still had their big day of testing where they mix the potential donor's blood with my blood. And so they still had a full day, each one of them, a full day of testing. And she said, I know that I am. Though the other friend was saying the exact same thing. So they both went for their day of testing on the exact same day. And I can normally stay pretty focused. And I sat in my office chair and stared out the window for 3 hours that morning, I think, just thinking, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And so my other friend called me at about 11:30, really upset, and they had released him from the process because his father had high blood pressure. And they said, when we're given so many applicants and we can find a perfect donor, we're going to go with that.
Carlie, oh my word.
And what I wasn't expecting is to have to console somebody that wasn't selected. And he would never want that for me either. If he listened to this, he'd be like, I can't believe you felt like that. But I did. I felt like he had given 8 months of his life to testing for this and had told his family and had prepared work-wise to be out that long. And in his mind, he was laying in that bed next to me, donating an organ. And it was almost like a mental letdown, you know? And so that was a really strange time for me because I'm like, I'm so sorry. And thank you so much. And what do you do? What do you say? Is there a gift? There's no gift. You don't send flowers to somebody. Thanks for trying to give me an organ. Right? There's no really great words to say.
So Jenny is your match.
Jenny is my match.
And how quickly from when they decided that did you guys go into surgery? Because that was a pretty orchestrated thing.
That was late August. And they give the donor the first option of when you want to schedule the surgery. And so her and I looked through the calendar. We were very methodical about when we could do it because the other thing was at the time we had to quarantine for 2 weeks before we could both go into surgery. So even just thinking about, you know, you're going to be out for this long for the recovery, but then to think you have to be home for 2 weeks prior. And they didn't even really want us being around our family or anything like that, because if we were to get it, the surgery was off. And given everything with the hospitals, there were only 2 surgeons that could do it. And I was very adamant that I had a certain surgeon. There were only certain days where he could even do the surgery. So we selected the 22nd, which happened to be the day that I was told that I needed to have the transplant. So it was exactly 1 year from the date that they told me that. So crazy how the timing of that works out. And I spent those 2 weeks, I really finished work in my mind when I left the office on that Friday and had told my teams. And it was a scary moment from that standpoint of, you've got it, because I don't know when I'm available. You would like to think that your mind will be with it enough that, hey, if you need something, just text me. I could probably answer it really quick. But I didn't know what I was walking into or how long I would be totally not with it. So you're on your own, you're empowered, you've got it. And they're like, well, what if? I'm like, there's no what ifs. You got it. If there's a mistake, be agile, pivot, but you've got this. And then I would go home and cry and think, oh my gosh, A, what am I setting them up for? And B, I hope I don't burn them out while I'm not available. But C, I've got to do this, you know, for me and my family. So those 2 weeks prior were spent writing letters to people, making videos for people. Everybody laughed because I had all of these boxes made for nurses. I had cookies made to give to the nurses and the surgeon before surgery.
Oh my word, you are crazy.
And I walked in to that surgery not nervous at all. I walked in at such a peace of mind that it's exactly where I needed to be at that exact moment, and that it was going to be the perfect scenario. And I know there's nothing perfect, but in my head, I had to say, this is going to go perfect. The other scary thing for me was my doctor warned Brent and I multiple times that when people wake up from this, because they do the big immune flush and you're on so many steroids for your body not to reject the kidney, he said, I've never had somebody that's not super raging, mad, mean, and oftentimes spouses leave in tears because of how horrible
Oh no,
the recipient is. And the thought of that for me was like, I can't do that. So for 60 days prior, I wrote the same thing in my journal every single morning, that I will wake up grateful. I will wake up happy. I will wake up kind, and I will ask about Jenny first. And I wrote those exact things every single day for 60 days. And when I woke up from surgery, Brent and Jenny's husband were walking by my room. I could see them, and they were walking to Jenny's room. I later found out. But I was like, Brent. He turned and he looked at me and he goes, "Did you have surgery?"
Have you been in yet? Oh my word.
He's like, "I knew it had been 7 hours, but they told me you weren't out. We were going to see Jenny.
Oh my
and then
word.
you call my name." And he's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm great."
Oh my word.
So he got the nurses. He's like, "What
Oh
is
my
going
word.
on?" But I remember all of it. And I said, "I want to FaceTime the kids."
Oh my word.
And he said, "Okay, are you sure you're up for it?" And I'm like, "Yes, they need to see that I'm fine." And I remember that 3-hour time frame from after surgery until he left that night. And then it gets a little fuzzy. But again, I think I had manifested so much that I was not going to be that stereotypical person waking up from that surgery.
You're showing that this relentlessness, does it make you lean into that even more now? Or do you give yourself more grace? How has this experience sort of given you, has it changed your perspective? Or do you feel like, this is who I am, and I was that through this experience, and I am still that now?
Yeah, I think during recovery, being told I had to stay home for 4 months was really hard for me. Because a lot of people said, "Well, you were home during COVID." I'm like, that was different. Everybody was home. But to be told that you have to stay home and friends can't come over and see you, and the kids, when they come home from school, need to stay 10 feet away from you, and you can't go to your daughter's theater performance or your son's championship basketball game. Those are life moments that I knew I was missing. That was really, really hard. Brent says it's probably the biggest blessing that COVID happened, because if COVID hadn't happened and I wasn't made to stay home during that time, I probably would have done too much. It got in my head, I think, more than I wish it had. There were definitely days where I'm like, "Well, I can't do this. This is horrible." But I also knew that I had to choose my heart. And the hard was actually getting through, making sure that this organ stayed sticky in my body. And I needed to wake up and high five myself every day. If you read The High Five Habit, it was one of the books I read in the hospital. And so I would wake up every morning and truly look in the mirror, high five myself, and be like, "Okay, it's a new reset. It's a new reset day, and choose your heart today and control what you can control." But I had to look at it like that every single day, because the days became really monotonous and long.
So what advice do you have? Well, maybe not everybody's going through the exact same sequence. We've all had times where life collapses on us. The expectations that we have, our normal armor kind of doesn't work for what life is delivering to the front door. And maybe you're still going through this reflection, but what advice do you have, or what sort of sits in your mind as I ask those questions?
That's a really great question. And I think I still do this every day, where I think, okay, what am I going to look at today from a positive standpoint? And I think the positivity has to come at every stage. So after I was released from the hospital, I still had to go downtown every other day to do blood work, which is an hour from my house. And you're walking in with, again, a bunch of sick people, and it feels like it's unnecessary. But I tried to find something to make all of those experiences worthwhile that just weren't about me. So I found, for instance, this amazing pillow contraption that I would put around my incision, and but it had pockets. And so I'd stuff everything in it. And so I didn't have to carry a purse when I went down there. And I would make it my mission every time to send a link to, somebody that was sitting there. They would be like, "What is that thing?" So I'd send the link and I'm like, "Buy it. It's amazing." Or I tried to make things fun in the lab of like, okay, when can I possibly not come down here anymore? And they're like, when your numbers are this, you'll graduate. And when I heard him say graduate, I'm like, but nobody's ever brought pomp and circumstance and a cap and gown down. So I'm going to bring it down in my backpack every day until I graduate, and then I'm going to play it. But the staff loved it. I think just finding something that's not hard in all of those moments to focus on is what got me through. And I think now it is my mission to share the story, share the journey, become an advocate for organ donation, because I think it was something so foreign to me until November of 2020. I didn't even know what that looked like for me. And now, gosh, if everybody would just give it an option or think about what that can mean for somebody else's life. Jenny saved my life. And I think a lot of people have the opportunity to do that for somebody if they're willing to give up 6 weeks of their life. So, for instance, at our national conference in 2 weeks, I'm announcing that we're giving 6 weeks of paid vacation to any organ donor moving forward. So just to be able to release something like that in our company and make something positive out it and share the story, and that it doesn't have to be as awful as everyone painted to me that it was going to be. It can end in a positive way.
If somebody is interested in becoming an organ donor, is there a website they can go to? What does that process look like?
Yeah. At IU Health, there is a website that they can go to, and then it talks about organ donation, and they can fill out the form, and it's really just starts with your blood type. That's where they start, and they start with blood work. And they don't have a lot of people that are interested just for doing it for nobody, because I don't think people think, gosh, what could I do, or how could I do this? But there's a lot of really healthy people out there that are willing to do that, for somebody. That would bring so much livelihood to the thousands of people. There's almost 100,000 people that go without the organ donation that they need annually to be able to get off dialysis.
Wow. Well, Carlie, thank you so much for generously sharing your story. It takes a lot of bravery to be vulnerable, especially when that's not the adjectives people would normally use about you. You're so accomplished, you're so special, you are so energy, and you are so giving. And even those people in our lives sometimes need loved. So thank you for sharing your story with us and just who you are. You're such a gift.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining me on another episode of Scared Confident. Until next time, keep telling fear, you will not decide what happens in my life. I will. If you want to get the inside scoop, sign up for my newsletter. We decided to make content for you instead of social media algorithms. The link is waiting for you in show notes, or you can head over to tiffanysouter.com. Thanks for listening in.